Hi guys, welcome back to another tutorial. My name is Victoria, and in today's video I'll be showing you how to draft a 3-part corset top with yoke and a basque waistline. So to begin, I'll be marking 1 inch downwards from the top end of my pattern paper. I'm just going to go in with my ruler and draw that point across, and that will become my shoulder line. I'll also be going in by 1 inch along the side of the pattern paper to create my new center front, like so. I went in with my ruler to draw out that point, and now I'm just indicating my new center front and that it will be cut on a fold. Now it's time to start inserting my vertical measurements, and I'm starting with my bust point at 11 inches. So from the shoulder line, I'm marking 11 inches downwards. I'll go in with my ruler to square that point across, and that will become my bust line. Next, I'll be marking my under bust point at 14.5 inches. I'll square out that point as well. And then I'll go ahead to indicate what each line stands for. So there's the bust line and the under bust line. And moving on, I'll be marking my waistline at 17 inches. I'll go in with my ruler to square that point across and indicate what that line stands for. Now for the neckline, I'm going for a simple 3x3 round neckline. I'll be using my French curve to connect it like so. And then I'll go ahead to create my shoulder slope. To do that, I'll be marking half of my shoulder measurements away from the center front along the shoulder line. And from that point, I'll be going down by 1 inch before connecting it to the neckline with my ruler. Next, I'll be creating the armhole, and to do that, I'll be coming up by 2 inches from the bust line. I'll square that point across, and that will become my upper chest line. After which, I'll be connecting the shoulder slope to the upper chest line like so, and then I'm going to be placing 1/4 of my bust circumference on the upper chest line. So I'm marking that point away from the center front before going ahead to find the midpoint of the line connecting the shoulder slope to the upper chest line. After I've gotten the midpoint of that line, I'll be going in by 3/4 of an inch before using my French curve to connect the 3 points together like so. Next, we're going to be creating the dart, and I'll start by marking half of my bust span measurement plus 0.5 along the waistline, the under bust line and the bust line. So for me, it's 4.5 because I'm busty, and I'm marking it away from the center front along these 3 lines. But for someone not so busty, you can use 4, 3.5 or 3 inches. So now that I've marked those points, I'll be using my ruler to connect the 3 points together, and then I'll be going down by 1 inch from the bust line. Now along the waistline and the under bust line, I'll be marking 3/4 of an inch on both sides of the bust span line. And then I'll be connecting all the points together. So first, I'll start by connecting the under bust line to the waistline in a straight line. And then using my French curve, I'll connect the 2 points along the under bust line to the bust span line like so. Now the next thing to do is to find the midpoint of the shoulder slope. So I'm going to measure that, and whatever measurement I have there, I'll divide it by 2 and mark that point. And then using my ruler, I'll connect it to meet the point on the bust line. Next, I'll be measuring the distance between the bust line and the under bust line. So here I have 3.5 inches, and I'll be marking that 3.5 inches around the bust line using the point on the bust line as its center. So now, using a disc or any round surface, I'm going to connect the traces together, and here it is. So now I'm going to be creating a second dart along this part of the circle right here. So for the part facing the center front, I'll be marking 0.75, and for the parts facing the side front, that's towards the armhole, I'll be marking 1.25. And then using my French curve, I'm going to connect these 2 points to meet the bust line. So now, using my red marker, I'll be going over the darts again just to make it more clear. Now from the center front, I'll be going in by 1/2 inch along the upper chest line to create the separation between the 2 breast cups. And you can also choose to go upwards or downwards from the upper chest line. It depends on how high or low you want the separation to be. Now, using my French curve, I'm going to be connecting that point to meet the first leg of the dart, like so. Then I'll flip it over to the other side and connect it to the other dart, that way creating the first half of the breast cup. Now for the second part of the cup, first I'll be finding the midpoint of this part right here, and from there I'll be going down by ½ an inch, and using my ruler I'm just going to extend that point outwards like so, and then I'm going to connect it to the other leg of the dart. So I'm going in with my French curve and I'm going to connect it to the second leg of the dart, and then I'm going to flip it over and connect it to the other dart as well. So once that's done, the two parts of the cup has been created, and it's time to create the third. And to do that, I'll be going down by 2 inches on the outer part of the cups, that's along the side and center front. And then along the inner corners, I'll be going down by 2.5 inches. And then using the straight end of my French curve, I'll be connecting the inner parts of each cup to the outer parts. So right now I'm just connecting them together at the center to show you the third part. So these two upper parts right here will be joined together to form one part of the cup, and this is the second and the third part of the cup. So right now I'm indicating how the two bottom parts of the cup will be joined together. And now for the top part, I'm going to be calling this 1A and the other side 1B. And this will be number 2 and number 3. So now that I'm done creating the cups, it's time to insert my horizontal measurements divided by 4. So I already inserted my bust circumference divided by 4. And to that measurement, I'll be adding the allowance for the dart. So here I have 2 inches for the dart. I'm going to be adding 2 inches to that measurement I have. And then I'm going to be extending that line, and I'll be adding 2 inches again for sewing allowance. So remember I dropped the upper chest line along the armhole by ½ an inch, so I'm just extending that line and I'm transferring that point to it. Then I'll go ahead and extend the rest of the other lines, and then I'll be inserting 1/4 of my waist circumference along the waistline. And to that measurement, I'll be adding the measurements for the dart along the waistline. So I have 1.5. I'll be adding 1.5 to that measurement before going ahead to add 2 inches for sewing allowance. So now that that's done, it's time to connect the sides. So I'll be connecting the waistline to the upper chest line with my ruler. Next, I'll be connecting this top part together so I can cut out the yoke. However, you can skip this part if you're making a corset without a yoke. So now that I'm all done, it's time to start cutting. So I've cut along the hemline. Now I'll be cutting along the sides, the armhole, shoulder slope, and the neckline. So next I'll be cutting out the yoke of the corset top before moving on to the cups. So just watch closely. So now that I'm all done cutting, I just have to tape the two top parts of the corset cup together to form one piece. Now, if you're going for a corset without a basque waistline, this is essentially all you have to do for the front piece. But for a basque waistline, I'll be moving on, and first I'm going to tape down the center front and the side front together to form one piece like so. And then I'll be placing fresh pattern paper underneath this piece. I'll be taping it down as well so it doesn't move. I'll also be trimming off any excess before moving on to create the basque waistline. And the first thing I'll be doing is to go down from the original waistline by 4.5 inches. You can use between 3 to 4.5, it's all up to you. But I want mine to be 4 inch deep, and the ½ inch extra allowance is to join it to the skirt, because this is actually going to be a gown. So now I'll just go ahead to cut along that line, and that will be all for the front piece. So here I have the center front and side front, which is taped together. I have the cups and the yoke. So now moving on to the back, I went ahead to draft a basic bodice for the back piece. I already have a tutorial on this. I'll leave the link in the description. So now I'll go ahead to start labeling my horizontal lines. So there's the upper chest line, the next one is the bust line, then we have the under bust line and the waistline. So normally there's supposed to be 1 inch or 1.5 inch zipper allowance along the center back, but I plan to use loops, so I didn't include zipper allowance. So now I'll be moving on to insert the dart, which is my bust span measurement divided by 2, and I'll be marking it on the waistline, the under bust line, the bust line and the upper chest line. I'll be using my ruler to connect these points together, and then on the waistline I'll be marking 1/2 inch on both sides of the bust span line, and then I'll be connecting those 2 points to meet the upper chest line like so. So now that that's done, it's time to insert 1/4 of my horizontal measurements. So I already went ahead to mark 1/4 of my bust circumference along the upper chest line to create my armhole. So all I have to do is add my sewing allowance to that measurement, which is 2 inches, and I'll move straight to the waistline to mark 1/4 of my waist circumference, and to that I'll be adding the total measurement I have for the dart, which is 1 inch, before going ahead to add the 2 inches for my seam allowance. Then I'll go ahead and connect the waistline to the upper chest line and extend all my horizontal lines. Now moving on to the neckline, I have 3 inches for the neck width, and for the neck depth I'll be going for a V neckline, and because I'll be using loops along the center back, I have to create an opening. So first I'll be going in by 2 inches away from the center back along the upper chest line, the bust line, under bust and the waistline. You can increase it to 2.5 or 3, it depends on how wide you want it to be. So I'm just going to connect these points in a straight line, and there's my new center back. So I'm just going to indicate this and also indicate that I'll be using this pattern to cut out 2 pieces. Now I'll go ahead to create my V neckline by connecting the neck width to the new center back. I'll go ahead to indicate my yoke before cutting it out. So I added 1 inch allowance along the waistline because I was worried it would be too short, but it turned out fine, so you don't have to do that. So I'm all done cutting, and there's the yoke and the rest of the back piece. So what I'll be doing next is to open up the dart and tape it back together so I don't have to worry about it later. But this part is optional. So I'm all done, guys. Here are the pieces for the back and here's for the front. So in my next tutorial I'll be showing you how to stitch this together, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.